Heavenly Father, on this eve of Sacred-Hearted Jesus of your feast day, we reflect on Holy Mother Teresa, and we are going to journey in her steps tonight, Craig and Pat. And we hope that we can be filled with your Holy Spirit and many graces during this time. And the joy of them sharing with us, we thank Him for this. And we ask you to continue to bless their journey and bless our journey, that we may come closer to our Holy Mother Teresa. Yes, it's in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you, sister. So we are going to try to record this. So someone from my secular community suggested we try to put it on YouTube. So I'd like to do a quick introduction. So this is a presentation that I did for the OCDS St. Teresa of Jesus community that meets at St. Florian's that I'm a member of. And I did the presentation with Pat's accompaniment on June 5th, 2017. So this is a reprising of that and a little bit of an update after thinking a little bit about it. So everyone's got a handout, and I'm going to talk through a number of slides, a number of charts that I put together to use kind of a low-tech approach. So the title of this is Spanish Wonders and Carmelite Pilgrimage. Okay, so there's two pieces to it. The Spanish Wonders is a trip that we did with Trafalgar, a coach trip around kind of the half of Spain that is the lower southeast, if you cut a diagonal right through Spain. So we did a coach tour, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. And then at the end of that coach tour, Pat and I went back to Madrid, rented a car, and took our little Carmelite pilgrimage to Avila, Alba de Tormes, Salamanca, and Segovia. Okay? Make sense? So I just wanted to make sure that I properly introduced the secular Discalced order that I am a member of. I'm sure you all know, but just for the YouTube. So the Secular Order of Discalced Carmelites, we are practicing members of the Catholic Church who, under the protection of Our Lady of Mount Carmel and inspired by St. Teresa of Jesus and John of the Cross, make the commitment to the Discalced Carmelite order to seek the face of God for the sake of the Church and the whole world. So I'm going to pass this around if you've not seen it. This is a brochure that was developed and I brought with me from the community that I was in Atlanta. So the secular Discalced are one half of the secular tree. There's another branch of the tree called the Ancient Observance. You may hear referred to as the Oak Carmen. I know very little about that branch of the tree. So to start, so I've left a large map of Spain over there, but I've got with me here the map that was used by our tour director, gave to each of us on the coach, that, you know, the pink line, right, is the Trafalgar coach tour we took, right? So we started in Madrid. One day, you know, the second day we took a day trip down to Toledo. Then we came back, got on the bus the next day, and went all the way down to Cordoba was the first stop we made. And then I think after Cordoba, before we got to Seville, we stopped and had a tour of an olive oil farm and factory and a dinner. And then we went on to Seville. And then the next day, we were in Seville 2 nights. Then we went on to Granada, spent 1 night there. And then up to Valencia, pronounced the correct way, spent 1 night there. And then on into Barcelona for 2 nights. So the Spanish Wonders, so I think this was 8 nights or 9 nights perhaps. So we covered a lot of miles, as you can see, and we saw a lot of things, mosques, palaces, museums, artwork, okay. The reason we wanted to do this is so that we could get a taste of what Spain has to offer, like the history, the culture, the different regions, the languages, the architecture, the royalty, the kings and queens, the landscape. So the cities I mentioned. My oldest brother and his wife had gone there, so they said, yeah, I really ought to go to Spain. We also ran into some people on another trip. Their first recommendation was visit Spain. They told us about paradors. I don't know if you've heard that term. A number of years ago, 30, 40 years ago, the Spanish government, in order to stimulate their tourist economy, spent money refurbishing some castles, some monasteries, some convents, some palaces, and turned them into bed and breakfasts. So very high quality, experience. And we rented, we'll talk more about this one, but we booked 3 nights in a parador right inside the walls of Avila and so on. And so, on page 2, so this page is kind of the itinerary for the Trafalgar part of it, and where I've got this highlighted in green, this represents the Carmelite pilgrimage part of it that Pat and I did on our own. Are you with me? Making sense? Okay, so the one thing I wanted to call out on the big chart is this list of Teresa of Avila's foundations. And you guys certainly have seen that. I've got handouts that I'll pass out for everyone. When I did this chart, I numbered all of the foundations. There is a book I used to prepare myself for the trip. Called The Divine Adventures. I don't know if you've seen this or not. Okay. It roughly follows the sequence in the foundations, of course, but this is done by this friar Tomas Alvarez and Fernando Domingo. So what it does is it lists in sequential order the foundations that Teresa of Avila developed, and there's a story about each one, but there is also, let me get to the first one here. There is also the journey that she took to get from one foundation to the other, including the miles and the elevation, which if you've been to Spain, you get to appreciate that. So this was incredibly valuable to me just to prepare myself for some degree of exposure to all of these convents, monasteries that she created. And what struck me when I looked at the map, okay, I didn't do the math on the miles we covered, but we covered all this on a bus. She covered all these in back and forth in carriages, walking, whatever, so I'd probably do the math and figure out, comparing the miles. But anyway, so that was the big tour. And then when we finished the tour in Barcelona, this green line right here is a train that we took back to Madrid. We then rented a car and made the short trip to Avila is right here, I think, right? So we stayed there 3 nights, and then the second day that we were there, we journeyed to Salamanca, but en route to Salamanca, we stopped and spent the morning at Alba de Tormes, where Teresa of Avila's grave is, or something. I've got some more photos on that. So, does that make sense?
Yes.
The big picture? Okay? And so, we had this marvelous, let me think here. So on page 4, I guess, on the handout, a page that looks like this. Right? Yeah, you guys got 2 per page, I only got,
Yeah.
yeah, it's this one right here.
It's bottom of the second page.
Yeah. So the reason I was interested in doing this trip is that I just did my first promise in January. And so this was a way of building the foundation, visiting these sites. And so what kept happening is that I really felt the hand of Holy Mother impacting how our trip was experienced. And the first one was, so we had spent the morning with a tour group in Seville. They let us go out and lunch. Pat and I made our way to a restaurant. We finished our lunch. Occasionally, frequently, always, we have a beer with our sandwich. So we finished our lunch and I thought, okay, I wonder where the convent is. So I Googled it. The convent in Seville was 3 minutes away. So we went to the convent, rang the doorbell, and they answered it. They let us in. I don't speak Spanish, but Pat does. No, she speaks a little bit of Spanish. She was able to use the phrase Carmelitas. So they opened the door and let us in, right? And so there was no one inside the door. They just let us in, and so we kind of made our way. It looked like up the stairs. Well, no, someone said, no, you can't come up here. You got to go the other way to where the chapel was. So we walked into the chapel, and we were just looking around, and there was a lady in there, not a sister. She was a maid. She was doing cleaning. So she waved us over. She said, come follow me. She took us down the side door, and here is what we saw. There's a reliquary of Santa Teresa de Jesus, and this is the picture of everything that's in there, and this is the inventory in Spanish of what was in there. And what absolutely knocked me over is that this book right here is the original of Interior Castle. It was, so this is like the 2nd or 3rd day on our trip. And not only, and so that is amazing, but this gown, or whatever the correct term is actually the gown she was wearing when she died. It was very powerful. And so we took many other pictures, right? And so the next town we were at was in Grenada, okay? So again, we had lunch, we had our beer. And we said, I wonder where the convent is in Grenada. So we did the same thing, Googled it. It was even closer than the first one. So we thought, well, okay, let's try this again. So we went up, found it, rang the doorbell. One of the sisters answered, again in Spanish. We tried to convince them that we were legitimate, Carmelite from the U.S. We couldn't. We only spoke English, they only spoke Spanish. So, okay. So we thought, well, let's call them. So we called them, they answered the phone. They still only speak Spanish, we still only speak English, and so we didn't connect. We walked around, took some pictures, and then when we got back to the hotel, we asked our tour director, who spoke Spanish, to call them. They called them, and the sisters told them they were having kind of a quiet day. They weren't accepting any visitors, so we didn't succeed in getting to that convent in Grenada. The next thing that happened was we got to Barcelona. We had some free time. We were trying to, so in Barcelona we saw the Sagrada Familia, which is a church designed by Gaudi that's been in the process of being built for like 150 years. And so we were looking at some of the other Gaudi buildings. We went into a little museum, and there was a book on Gaudi, which I thought I brought with me, maybe in my briefcase. But it talked about a building that Gaudi had designed for the Teresian College in Barcelona, which apparently was his lowest budget architectural work. So we had no idea there was a Teresian College there, so we made our way to it, and this is some pictures of that Teresian College. We were not able to get in and see it, but it's the way he designed it, it was to emulate interior castle. So, I've not read Interior Castle from front to back, so I couldn't really, connect the dots. But if you go online and Google this Teresian college, you'll get some really powerful visuals of how that is designed. Like I said, we didn't get through into it, but it's on our list if we ever go back. Okay, so that was another example. I just picked up a book, flipping through it, and there was a convent that he designed. This Gaudi designed, again, the second instance of the hand of Holy Mother. So from there then, we took the train back from Barcelona to Madrid, rented a car, and went on to Avila. Now, it's probably not pronounced that way in Spain. Bear with me. So this is a picture, this middle one here is the Parador that we stayed at, right inside the walls. Okay, so we spent some time walking around the wall. This little picture here in the upper left hand I thought was a good visual to give you the big picture of the town of Avila, which is the highest town in Spain, and the original walls are still intact all the way around the town of Avila. In fact, in the last couple of years, they have scrubbed the walls and cleaned them up so they really look nice, right? And so this is the night view of what the walls of Avila look like. And a really funny story about, so we got there about 1 o'clock, checked in, found a parking spot, walked into the hotel, and checked in, and they said, well, your room is not ready. And so, okay, come back at 2 o'clock and you can check in. So we came back after getting lunch and a beer, I suppose. And so they said, they said, okay, you go to room 102 or whatever it was. You go to that room and there's people in there. So they said, oh, so sorry, we're going to upgrade you. So they gave us a better room, a suite, with some really nice, And so what was really funny is that the following day, there was a big celebration in the town, okay? Right on the main square, there's this huge statue of St. Teresa of Avila, right? And when we walked up to the cathedral, there was all these big, what do you call them, puppets? Puppets, I guess. You see how large they are. There's a lady standing there, right? So you can get a view of the scale, right? And so they were celebrating the Mass, the feast day of San Segundo. I don't understand the importance of that town, but it was a big deal because in the cathedral, there was many, there was bishops and there was a whole bunch of priests on the altar, and it was a huge celebration, right? And so that after the Mass, when they came out, they did this parade through the town. There was castanets and dancers and all that stuff. And so we got some good videos, and you'll see them at the picnic of that kind of parade because it went all the way through the town. Well, we did some other things that afternoon. We get back to our hotel room, and we start hearing these fireworks go off, right? And we look out our room, this really nice room, and we see these tremendous fireworks go out. So it is beautiful nighttime images of fireworks. So the next page here, St. Teresa in Avila. When I was there, I have a tendency to find my way in this world by reading books. So I ran into this book. I think I may have purchased it at St. Joseph. But it's a pilgrim guide to Avila, right? And so we didn't pick this up until we were halfway through our visit, but there are 5 chapters in here. They talk about the convent of Santa Teresa, which is built on or near the site where she was raised, right? And we ended up visiting that church late in the afternoon. When we came in, they were actually doing the evening prayers in Spanish, so we were able to participate in that. We did not see the second one, 3 stops on the way. We did go to the monastery of the Encarnacion. I'll come back to that later on. But the highlight of being inside the walls of Avila was our first visit to this convent of St. Joseph, where there's a museum and then there's the church itself and a convent there, right? So we both spent some time in the museum, we spent some time in the chapel, we went back to the museum. I spent more time in the museum than Pat, so she went back into the church. The guardian of the monastery, when I got done, he said, go into the church, go into the chapel. And I sat there next to Pat, and the sisters were singing the Liturgy of the Hours evening prayer. It was just incredible, again, for us, and of the Holy Mother. And then we went on from there, just walking around the town, and came to this convent of Santa Teresa in Avila. So this is the altar and just one of the statues that's there, right? So that was the first full day in Avila. Then, the next full day, we ventured down to the Encarnacion, right? And so these pictures here are that Christ on the cross, that John on the cross did. And this lower one here, it's really quite small. It's only about, maybe 13, 14 inches high, which was a surprise to me. And when you come into the Encarnacion, there's a picture of John Paul II. I don't remember which year it was, but I think he was there. They said there were 3,000 Carmelite Sisters there for that celebration. I don't remember the year, but so these are some pictures from the convent itself. When you walk in, this is the first thing you see. There was an interesting, so we visited the museum that's there. We had been there maybe an hour or so, and we were getting ready to leave. There was another couple there, and this door to leave was locked. So there was a moment of, oh my gosh, how long are they going to keep us in here? Well, this is the threshold that Teresa of Avila came across when she came into the Carmelite convent. It was just, again, an interesting experience. And so this is just a picture of me outside, the chapel itself of Encarnacion. This little picture here, George and Martha Kirsten. Martha is the president of our community. She told me to visit this place called CITES. And I don't know what the Spanish, this is an acronym, I don't know what the full Spanish, but it's actually, it's called the University of Mysticism. So there's like a small college campus there where people come to study the works of Teresa of Avila and John of the Cross and others. Okay, I just wanted to include a visual. There are classrooms, there are altars, there are residences, there's gardens. It's a marvelous, marvelous site. So then the third day, we ventured on our way to Salamanca to Alba de Tormes, which is where Teresa of Avila is buried. So there's a large church there. There's a church nearby for John of the Cross. And so when you come in, there's this huge statue of Teresa of Avila, and in the background there are